Hey there, fellow art lovers and fans of all things painted. Welcome back to my regular viewers, and if you're new here, welcome. Name's Cal, and it's great to have you here. Anyone here among you play Valheim? This is one of my favorite games and is one I will quite happily binge on for weeks at a time, with breaks for eating, sleeping, etc. of course. For anyone unfamiliar, Valheim is an exploration and building game where you play as a Viking warrior recently departed from Midgard and sent to Valheim to slay the Forsaken and prove your worth to the gods. Throughout Valheim, you face all manner of beasts, and over the next few months I plan to paint them all, as well as some biome art. We're starting out with what will be most players' first encounter, the Greyling. They are small, tree stump-like creatures with glowing yellow eyes. I'm getting no-face vibes as I sketch out the pose. The little blank face tilted to one side. This one's holding a skull it's picked up from somewhere. These creatures are not very strong, and are generally little more than a nuisance while you're trying to chop wood or hunt deer. I can't tell you how many times I've had one mess up a shot just as I'm about to take it. Often I tend to ignore them after a bit. So long as you've had a good meal or are wearing something more than rags, they aren't a real threat. When we're done with the pose, I move on to adding in colour, starting with a warm woody brown. They've got a warmer colour palette than their larger black forest dwelling cousins, maybe owing to the biome they make their home in. They live in the meadows, the warm, sunny, idyllic starting grounds of Valheim, where the biggest threats come from Eikthyr, the first of the Forsaken, and you don't have to face him until you want to. These creatures are made from mostly tree bark, so that's the kind of texture we're going for here, painting in lots of deep shadowy recesses and cracks all across the body, all running from top to bottom. Their sprite also appears to be covered in moss, so I used a nice mossy looking brush to paint in some patches all over their body. I also added in some little vines for good measure. Greylings are one of your first sources of resin in the game, which is used for building and fueling most light sources. So I've put some resin dripping out of a few of the knotholes on its body. If you've ever seen resin, you'll know it's this viscous, honey-like substance that hardens on the outside of trees. I put in an extra deep recess in around the head where it pokes out of the main stump and gave its eyes their golden glow. I wonder what that light source is. Probably not a tiny internal candle. These things fear fire like I fear wasps. Maybe it's some kind of bioluminescence or furly power. On its back is some mossy stone packed in tightly. It shares this rocky back with the other varieties of grey. I chose a really pitted, weathered-looking rock as reference, and began adding in the shadows and then topping it off with the same moss I painted onto the bark. Then we've got the skull this Greyling is clinging onto, perhaps belonging to one of Valheim's previous inhabitants. Probably find it lying in one of the burial shrines. This skull is old, so it's not pristine and bleached like the ones you see on display in laboratories. It's dull, cracked, missing some teeth and its whole lower jaw. Why does this Greyling want to hang on to it? Who knows? Finally, I turn my attention to the background. This isn't a full illustration, so we're just going for a simple background with a colour that won't fight too much with the colours of the Greyling. I made use of gradients to give it a bit of depth, and a flat rectangle with some gradients added to act as the floor. Lastly, I duplicated our Greyling and inverted it to make the floor reflective. I also added a shadow to grind it onto the floor. And we're done. I'm pretty happy with how the gnarled mossy bark came out and the glow of the eyes, but let me know what you think. If you enjoyed what you just watched, Please be sure to leave the video a like and subscribe and ring the bell to see more content. If you want to support my art, you can find a link to my Ko-Fi in the description. And if you want to get straight into some more art, you can go and watch this video for my latest content. Or this one for something random.